Okay. Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining. And this is the session for day 10. And here in this session, we are going to cover SFTP connectivity. Before going to start SFTP connectivity, let's start with the recap of the previous session. So in previous session, we have worked on the database connectivity where we created a ATB database and inserted data into the table, and we perform various operations while calling the data, calling the PLSQL procedure and all. So now in this session, in the today's session, we will work on the SFTP connectivity. Like we have the file server, how we can place the data file over server through OIC, and if our data file is already present over server, how we can fetch the specific data file, and all the reasons like movement of the file, archiving of the file, and removing, deleting, all these things we are going to learn. And yes, in last of the session, we will use REST API in Oracle integration to invoke REST API to create API invoices in Oracle Fusion. So everything we are going to learn in this session. So let's start. So here you can see, let me first open the server. So for connecting the file server, I used WinSAP software. You can use any software based on your business requirement or whatever they like organization provide you to connect. So for creating the connecting to the server, we require the SFTP credentials like host name, port name, user, password, and all. So right now I have the host name, so I'm just going to add this host name here. So as this is SFTP server, that's why here we have selected SFTP and the port for 2022. Maybe that port can be different based on your server. So I'm just going to add all the details. And first I'm going to connect file server in my application in my system so that we can see, like we can check all the files and we can debug all these things, right? So here in the file server, we have one folder that Fox OIC, and here we want to place one file. We want to place one file from OIC. So what kind of file we want to place? For example, we are getting request payload from user while running the integration. So this is the request payload for suppose employee data, and I want to create one CSV file, and that CSV file should be placed over this specific directory. So how we can perform that kind of operation? So for that, we have to create connection. We have to create FTP connection so that we can in our Oracle integration can connect with the file server. Just like we have WinSAP software that is going to help us to connect with the server. So same in Oracle integration, we required one connection so that we can connect with the file server. So let me first create the connection. So here you can see in Oracle integration for creating the connection of file server, FTP, or that can be SFTP.
Hello,
We have
hello. Hey,
yeah.
Jafar, can you record this session?
Yeah, I'm recording this session. Okay, so placing the file over server on making connectivity with server in OIC, we have connection. So we have two types of file server, right? That can be FTP server or SFTP server, right? So in Oracle integration for connecting with both server, we have FTP connection only. So here if you will search, we have FTP connection. With the help of this connection only, we can connect with the file as FTP server, or that can be the FTP servers. So here, as we know that we have as FTP server, so I'm going to create connection with FTP adapter, and here I'm going to give the name XX SFTP connection 01. This is my connection name, and I selected type as role, trigger, and invoke, create. And here we have to provide the credentials. So here you can see in FTP adapter only we can make a connectivity between both SFTP or FTP. So how we can identify, or the connection will identify, here you can see FTP server host. So first we have to provide the host. So this is our SFTP host, and here you can see FTP port. So the same we have port as 2022, so 22, and here you can see SFTP connection. It's asking that is it SFTP connection or FTP. So yes, it is SFTP connection, so I will select yes. If our file server will have the connectivity for FTP, we will select no. Nothing else. And then after that, we don't require to pass anything. It can be the depend on your server connectivity, whatever server you are going to make a connectivity, you have that kind of details also, right? So right now, I'm just going to provide the basic details like username and password. Just I provide username and the password. So now here, right now, you can see connection is in draft status. So once we will go and test, diagonals and test. So it's tested, right? You can see confirmation. It means we successfully created the connection. Now we have to save the connection so that the draft status will be changed to configure. And once any connection status change to configure, it means that connection is ready to use in integration. So now done. So what is our requirement? Our requirement is to get some data as a request payload from user, and based on the data, we have to generate one file, and that file need to be placed over server. For example, if you will see in previous session, in various previous session, we created some file. So we created some file based on the data file, and we send that file over email and all, right? So no, this was not the file. Somewhere we created here employee employee response. No, not this one. Okay, we'll create a new CSV file based on the data. So suppose here we are getting this 5 column from user as while running the integration. Based on that, we have to create one file and we have to place this file over server. So let me create sample CSV file with this name POB domain contact address, and I want to add a few more columns like creation date created by an instance ID, like that kind of column we want to add. So this will be our simple CSV file. So I'm just going to save this CSV file and store in the desktop only. File simple, and here I will select CSV. So this is the sample file we created. So based on this sample file only, we will generate file in OIC, and that file will be placed over the server. For placing the file over server, we have two options. Both options we will discuss here while creating the integration. So let me move to the integration part, and here we have to click on create. So as we are going to configure the request payload, so we have to select the app driven integration. In schedule integration, we cannot configure request payload or response payload. So here I have to give the name XX SFTP integration 01. Click on create. Now again we have to add the REST endpoint so that we can configure the request and the response payload, and that integration can be exposed as REST API. So here I will search my REST connection. Now I have to provide the name. This is the same we mostly following, right? So here I will select post as we have to configure the request and the response payload. Next, in the Rix, here we have to give the name. So suppose write file over TP. Next, and here we have to provide the request payload. So what is the request payload? We know that our request payload having the employee structure basics. So here just we have to provide here. Done. Next, and we have to provide the response payload. So what kind of response we want to return? So the file does whatever file we are going to create, right? So that file name we want to return in the response. So in response, we want to return two things: a status that can be success or error, and the second will be the file name and the directory, FTP directory. So where we are going to place the file. So that kind of details we want to return back. So here, if you will see, so right now we have to provide the file directory while writing the file over server, right? So right now we don't have file directory, so we can directly hard code the file directory in our Oracle integration only. So instead of hard coding the directory, we will use lookup so that we can fetch the runtime directory where we have to place the file, from where we have to get the file, all these things, so that we can also learn the exposure of the lookups in OIC. So here we have already created the sample payload for response. I will configure here now. Okay. Next, and done. So we successfully configure the endpoint, REST endpoint, so that we can add the request and the response payload. So let me create one lookup. That lookup we will use to get the file directory where we have to write the file. So here we are going to create a lookup. For creating the lookup, we have to navigate to the lookup. and here we can create the lookup. So let me just click on create, and here we have to provide the lookup name. So what kind of name will be? So here I will give name something like the XX common LKP. So here at the time when you will work on the project, so this XX will be replaced by your project code. So it's most of the time we are following that kind of a structure only. And as this is the lookup, that's why in last we added LKP for denoting that lookup. It's not mandatory, but yeah, naming convention we are most of the time following. So that's why I given this LKP. You can use whatever you suggest or the project decided. And so here you can see lookup. Whenever we are saying that lookup, it means that we have the facilities to store data in tabular form and the row and column form, right? So here we can have multiple row and multiple columns. So suppose I want to create one row, and that row will having the integration code. So suppose I am going to create this integration, and that integration is related to SFTP, right? So I will give the integration code. I will write one column that will be our source column, int underscore code, right? So here we will provide the SFTP. It means that this row, whatever data will have in this row, this data will be fetched using this int code SFTP only. So suppose we have different row, and that row is known as suppose AP. So we are going to create one lookup, that lookup having the value AP, and based on that we will store all the details like for AP, what will be the supplier or the business unit or anything like whatever we can configure based on our requirement. So right now for SFTP, I just want to go for integration code as SFTP, and based on that, as we have to configure the directory, so I will create one column with the name of SFTP underscore source directory. And here we provided the SFTP source directory. It means that in integration, we will pass SFTP integration code as a SFTP, and we will pass the SFTP source directory. So what it will return based on this SFTP. So integration code, whatever value will have in this column, it will return that one. So here again, let me create another column as SFTP archive directory, SFTP ARC directory. So suppose we created two directory, that the first time when we will create the file, integration will create file here. We will create another integration. That integration will read the file from here, and it will make it archive in another directory. So we will write that one. So let me create one archive directory also here. So suppose we have file as archive directory name as archive. So this is our archive directory. So I will copy this archive directory and will pass here. And this is our source directory. So I will copy this one and I will paste here. Right, for AP, I don't want to configure anything right now. We'll add later on. So just let it be same. So here we have to save. So once we will save, the drive status will be changed to configure. It means now this lookup is ready to use. And here even we can provide the file name convention, what kind of file name we are going to provide. So let me add one more column that will be known as the file pattern. File pattern. So something like I want to start my file name from XX employee file, and then after whatever value we want to concatenate, we will use in the integration. So now let me save again. Now we are done with that. So here we come. So first we have to get the data from this lookup. So we will create one variable. So for creating variable, we have assign. So I will drag assign here. I will give the name. So I will give the name as default assign. It means that we are going to create variable where we will create initial variable. So here as first we have to create the path, right? Variable to store the directory where we have to write the file. So I will give the name as var underscore var, denoting that this is the variable, local variable we are going to create, and underscore. Then after we will give the name. So suppose var underscore, this is will be directory. So source directory. And here we have to provide the value for the directory. So from where we will get the value, we will edit. So right now we don't have value coming from anywhere. We have the value from the lookup. So how we can fetch the lookup value in integration? So for fetching the lookup value in integration, we have one function, that is lookup values. So here you can see we have function lookup values. We have to drag this function whenever we want to get the value of the lookup. That can be the mapping, any mapping, or the expression builder of the variable and all, whenever we want to configure and we want to pass. So when we drag this lookup value function, this is OIC certification questions for getting the lookup values from lookup values data in integration, which function we have to use. So this is the lookup value function. And here you can see we have multiple lookups created on the sys instance. All lookups are visible here. So here we have to use this XX common LKP. So I will select this common lookup and go next. And here you can see we have two options. The first option for source column. So it's asking us based on which column you want to fetch the data. You want to fetch rest of the column. So based on this integration code, I want to fetch all these columns. So here we have to select the source column as int code. And then after it's asking that which column you want to fetch the data for which column. So I want to get the data for this SFTP source directly. So I will even copy this one, or here we have to select. So select target column, and here we have SFTP source directly. I will select this one, right? Next, and here you can see based on that we selected, we have the SFTP. Based on SFTP code, we will get the Fox OIC, and based on AP, right now we don't have anything. Just go next. Here we have default value. So default value, it means that in lookup, if we don't have any value, what will be the default value? So right now I don't want to provide any default value, so I will skip here. If you want to provide the default value, you can use the directly here. So next, and done. So when we are done, you can see the expression builder added the expression here. And here you can see this is the source value. So this source value will be replaced by the value of this integration code. So where we have the value of integration code SFTP, so I will replace this with SFTP. Here you can see the actual value, right? This is our lookup name, and this is the source column, and this is the value for source column, and this is the destination column or the target column for which value we want to get. And here you can see in the last we have the single double quotes here. So this is the default value. If we will pass here, if we didn't have the value from lookup, the default value pick from here. But right now I don't want to configure any default value. So now validate. So this is the same directory we can use for different purposes. So suppose here, even once integration completed, I want to send an email. For sending an email also, we can configure the email here, right? So here, let me add a column for email. Success email and error. Can you anyone please put your email here? I will add the email here. So error email. So now in success email, let me put my email only, and error email. Let me add this, right? Let me add my email also. So in error case, we added three emails. In success case, we have only one email. So now everything is fine. So let me save this lookup. Now here we have to send an email. So we will use that lookup values for here also. So instead of every time dragging, if we have the expression here for getting the lookup values, we will use this expression everywhere. So we validate it, close. So now we got the source directory, destination archive directory. We don't require in this case. We require file pattern. So what kind of file name we are going to provide our server. So I will create another variable var underscore file pattern, and here again I will use the lookup. So I will paste the same value, and instead of source directory, I will give the column name the file pattern column name, so that it will return the value for this column only. Now validate those. And now here we have to get the email, right? So again I will use var success email, and here we have to use the success email name, column name, and the last error email column. Var underscore error Here I need to copy this expression again. And we have error email here. Okay, and close. Now we're done with the variable creation, the default variable. So at runtime, we will get the value from here only. Now everything is fine. Now we have to write the file over server, right? So we have the data coming from the request payload and we have to write the file. For creating the file over server, we have the FTP connection. So I will add the FTP connection here. XX FTP connection 01. I will add here. And here we will need to give the name to the endpoint. So I'm just going to write the file. So I will use write underscore FTP. Next. Here you can see we have to select the operation. So for creating the file over server, we have to use write file operation. We added the write file operations. Once we added the write file operation, we have the option. Even we can encrypt the file while writing the file and we can use different operations. So right now we will just write the file. So here you can see we have the output directory where we have to write the file. And this is the file name pattern for which file name pattern we have to write. Even you can see while writing the file, Oracle provided different patterns like we can use the sequence, we can use the while writing the file, we can use the date and time. So once you will click here, you can see different sequence available here. If we will use percentage SEQ, it will generate the sequence 1, 2, 3. If we will use YYYMMDD, it will generate the file with the name of YYMMDD. Something like that we can use. So I don't want to use anything here. So here you can see it's mandatory to provide these two value here. But we are getting from file name and the directory from where we are getting from lookup, and that value we are stored in the variable. And here we can't map that variable because this is not expression builder. So what we need to do for the test purpose for this moving to the next control, what we will do, we will provide any dummy value, something like that XX, right? And now the same value we can provide here also while configuring the FTP endpoint, or the same we can provide in the mapping also. So once we will provide the value in the mapping, that value will be override from the mapping value. So we will move to the next. And here we are going to write the file. And what will be the file structure? We are going to write CSV file. That's why here we have to select the CSV. Even we can select no. If we will select no, then we have to give the file reference here. And if we selected yes, then we have to provide the file data to this endpoint. So we will see both, right? So here we have to go for next. And here we have to upload the file structure. So we already created the file structure here with the name of employee simple, right? Employee simple.csv. And here we have all the columns. So whatever columns we given, now I will give the record as R, record set as RS. Next and done. So now we added the FTP endpoint to write the file over server. In mapping, we have to provide the file data and the file name and the directory, all these things. So here you can see in the outbound FTP header types, once you will expand here, you can see these two details, the file name and the directory. These two are the one which we have the option for configure option while configuration. So we know the directory, we have the variable where we store the source directory. I will map this directory, and the file name, we have the file name pattern. So remember, whenever we are going to create the file, we have to provide the file extension also, right? So right now in the file name pattern, we have only XX employee file, but we don't have pattern, right? That .csv or .text and all. So here what we will use? We will use concat. So this will be a starting of the file name. Then after we want to concat underscore, and after that underscore we want to concatenate the date. So here I will get the date from here. So we have the date time. I will concatenate the date time, and after that I want to concat message as .csv. So I will use CSV here. So we are done with the file name. Once we will set here, you can see the file name will be the value coming from lookup underscore the date and time and then .csv. So now it's done. And we are done with that, the file name and the directory. Now it's time to provide the data. So what kind of data will be for the file? So data for the file, we will here you can see RS record set and the record. And here you can see this is the array element. It means that we can have the multiple record to provide. So here you can see the data we are getting from where? We are getting data from the request payload. So once we will expand the request payload, you can see we have the employee data. This is the same request payload we added here, employee data, and inside the employee data, we have the multiple values. The same, this array element will be mapped with this array element, name will be mapped with this name, DOB will be mapped with this DOB, domain will be mapped with this domain, and the contact will be mapped with contact, address will be mapped with address, and these are the additional details we added. So creation date, again we will have the current date time. I will direct this current date time here, and created by, we know that in runtime metadata we have the instance ID. So I will map this instance ID by instance ID, and created by, it means that we have the invoked by. So I will drag this invoked by here. So now everything is fine, validate and close. So now we added the REST, we added the FTP endpoint to place the file over server. And in this case, we are successfully able to write the file over server. And now we have to return the integration response. So in integration response, what we have to return? Let me show you. So in integration response, we have to return the status, we have to return the file name and the FTP directory. So right now, let me provide the status as hard-coded success. We can handle the exception using a scope and all, and then so that we can add the success and error. So just for testing purpose, I'm providing success only. And here we have to provide the file name. So right now, from where we will get the file name? We pass the file name while writing the file. So here you can see, once the file will be written, we will have the details, some basic details. If we will expand the node, here you can see the file name, directory, and the status. So this file name we will map here, and from where it will place the file. So this directory we will map here. So everything is fine. Even we can pass this to file name and the directory from the request also. So in request also we pass this to, right? So here you can see in the request also we have the file name and the directory. So let me save here and close. So now our integration is completed. Now we have to trigger an email also, right? So for sending an email, we have to add the notification here, and we'll give the name as email notification, create, and here let me add from email. I will give the hard-coded values no reply at oracle.com. Even this values, the from email also we can configure in the lookup, and to whom we have to send. So we have already created variable which store the details. So we have the var success error, success email. So I will direct this email here, variable, close, and here we have to provide the subject. The subject will be the status success file placed over server. So now we are done with that. Now we have to write the message. Hi team, please find uh, so right now we don't have file reference to provide here because we didn't created the file. We directly created the file over server. That's why we don't have the file reference. If you will see the attachment in the left side, you cannot find the file reference anywhere, because if you will see the endpoint, FTP endpoint, we directly place the file over server by providing the data. So we have the data, but we don't have the file reference. So that's why we will not provide the file reference in the attachment. So validate and close. So now everything is done. We have one error because it's mandatory to provide minimum one tracking variable for each and every integration. So that's why we have that error. Save and close. So now it's successfully created. It's time to activate the integration. Let me deactivate the previous integration I created. Based on the element we added in the integration, it will take some time to activate. So here integration is activated just to go for test. So in body here we have to provide the request payload. So here you can see this we activated wrong integration. Right? Let me do it again. So this is our integration which we have to activate the SFTP integration one. Wait, just waiting for activating this integration. Now integration is activated. We have to run this one. So here in body you can see we have the data. So this is the sample data we provided while configuring the request payload. So even we can change the data, and right now for testing purpose we don't want to change the same data we will pass here. And here once we will click on test, the same data will be passed as a trigger endpoint to the rest node, and the same we have mapped to the FTP to place file over the server. Once this will be completed, we will get the response. In response, we will get the file name and all, and the same file will be placed over the server. Just waiting for the placing the file over server. So here you can see integration completed successfully, and yes, we got the error. So what error we got? Let me check. So somewhere we got the error. We got the error while placing the file over server only. Here you can see we successfully get the file, get the data request payload in the start rest. So once you can see we have all the data, and after getting all the data we created default variable. In the default variable we store the value. You can see all this value we are getting from the lookup only. So we have the all values from lookup. Now after that we pass the value here, message sent to FTP. So what value we passed? Let me check here. What's the error? In the message we pass this data, and with this data we provided the header. So here in header you can see outbound properties. Here we have file name. You can see this is the file name we created. Okay, so that can be this can be the issue, and the file directory here we have to where we have to place the file, and this is the data. So what we error we got, just click on the fault, and here if you will see the DNC binding component was unable to establish bound due to following issue: error establish session error in establish session with is ensure the host and the port specify in the. Okay, so right now we are not able to make a connectivity with server. Let me check what is the issue. So we have the file server working here. Suppose we are placing the file here. If we are able to place file, let me check here, right? There can be some issue. First check with the connection. That connection working fine. Okay, here we have error in the SFTP connection only. We are not able to make the connectivity. So let me check what is the error. So here we have the host and the host, yes, SFTP. We have the same user, the password, test, diagonist and test. Are valid. Oh yeah, what is the issue in the server? So let me check the file server issue. Now here you can see we got another SFTP server, and this is the SFTP server details, host, port, and username. We connected the different SFTP server using file server, and again here we created the same folder. Now if you will see the integration earlier, what we were doing, we created various connections, right? And every time we are trying to add the configuration to the connection was here you can see the connection XXFTP connection 01, but previously I had connection with XXSFTP connection. Now, everyone, are you able to hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay. So actually previously what mistake we were doing, we have two connection with the same name. You can see XXFTP connection 01 and the XXSFTP connection 01. Today we created this connection, but in integration we use this connection. And we were having the issue in the SFTP server also. That's why we are getting error. Here you can see this connection we created today on 21st August, but we don't have any integration connected with them. So that's why we having the error. So we edited the connection. We changed the new connection connectivity details. So if you remember previously when we started creating the connection, we added the host SFTP port as 2022. But if you remember, like for FTP server, we have port as 2022. For SFTP server, we have port 2022. And for FTP server, we have port 21. So that's why once we selected port 21, we selected the SFTP connection as no. Because this is not the SFTP connectivity, this is for FTP connectivity. That's why we have SFTP connectivity as no. And here the same, we have user ID and password. We have the updated user ID and password and the host details. So once we done, we tested that one and it's everything working fine. We use this connection in our integration, right? So here this is our integration, and in the integration we use this connection, right? The connection name is FTP connection 01. And once we done with the changes, we updated the credentials to the FTP connection. And once we submit, integration completed successfully. And here if you will see, we pass the, again we are going to suppose pass the data as Ajay Kumar 01 and something like 002. And once we are submitting by clicking on the test, this data will be passed to OIC. OIC will add FTP connection. With the help of that, it will place file over the server, and in response we will get the status as success, and this is the file name. Every time whenever file name will be generated, this is the fixed value we are getting from lookup. If we will update the lookup, here you can see we have the lookup, and if file name we will update that. Suppose employee access employee file SFTP, and we save here. So at runtime, we change the value, right? We change the value at runtime even without editing the integration. And once we will submit, new file will be generated. File will be generated with new file name patterns. Here you can see. In the file name pattern, again, where we have, sorry, let me check it. We updated the lookup file name, then file name pattern as FTP. Hard to run. Sorry. Here you can see. Once we created executed the integration, it's created file with xx employee file sftp underscore the value date and time we concatenated and dot csv. And if we will move to the file server, we will having the file here. Once we will refresh, here we will have the file. Wait for a while. File got deleted. File created here in OIC only. Okay, all file got deleted automatically from this server. Let me execute this. Maybe this is public free server, that's why it's not allowing to place file here, or maybe it's deleted automatically. But yes, we created integration to place file over server, and that integration completed successfully. And if you will try with your file server, that will be working perfectly fine. Even I have created various time, but I don't know why this time it's not showing file here. Yeah, it's not allowing us to place the file here. Maybe there can be different issues. So this is the way we can create connections of FTP, and we can use that FTP connection in integration. In next session, we will try to get another file server, and then we will explore more operation in that. So sorry for bit different difficulties in this session. We will try to get another file server and we'll continue later on. So we can wrap up for today. Thank you so much for joining the session. If you have any other queries, you can ask right now, or we'll continue to end the session. Anyone having any issue or anything you want to ask? Okay, then we are going to close the session for today. Thank you so much for joining.